The small human shuttle landed on the crystal platform of the Velthari Imperial Palace. It looked old and tired compared to the sleek silver ships of the Empire. The Velthari guards watched with cold eyes as the door opened and a single man stepped out. His name was Daniel Cole. He was 34 years old, a sergeant in the United Earth Defense Force. He wore his dress uniform, dark blue with silver buttons, but it was not fancy or impressive. There were no medals on his chest, though he had earned many. He had left them behind on purpose. He was not here to impress anyone. The palace rose before him like a mountain made of glass. It caught the light of 3 suns and threw rainbows across the ground. The Velthari Empire controlled 40 star systems. And this was the heart of their power. Billions of souls answered to the voice that spoke from this place. Daniel took a deep breath and walked forward. 2 guards met him at the entrance. They were tall, almost 8 feet, with silver skin and eyes that glowed soft purple. Their armor was beautiful, covered in patterns that shifted like living things. They looked at Daniel the way a person might look at an insect. "You are the human ambassador," one of them said. It was not a question. "I am the representative sent by Earth," Daniel replied. His voice was calm and steady. "I am here to speak with Empress Solara about peace." The guards exchanged a look. One of them laughed quietly. Then they turned and walked into the palace. Expecting him to follow, Daniel followed. The inside of the palace was even more beautiful than the outside. The floors were made of something that looked like frozen starlight. The walls showed moving images of the Velthari conquests across the galaxy. Thousands of worlds, all brought under the control of the Empire. Daniel saw human colonies among them, small and fragile, marked in red as recent conflicts. He kept his face empty and his heart quiet. He could not afford to show emotion here. They walked for nearly 20 minutes through endless hallways. Velthari nobles and officials stopped to stare at the human. Some of them pointed. Some of them whispered. A few of them smiled in a way that was not friendly at all. Finally, they reached the throne room. It was the largest room Daniel had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that clouds actually formed near the top, soft and white against a painted sky. The floor stretched out like a silver ocean, perfectly smooth, and at the far end, floating 3 feet above a raised platform, was the throne of the Velthari Empire. On that throne sat Empress Solara Vethkin. She was young, only 24 years old by human counting. But she had ruled the empire for 5 years, ever since her father died in a war against a species that no longer existed. She had silver skin like all her people, but hers seemed to glow from within. Her eyes were deep violet, sharp and intelligent. Her hair was long and white, flowing down her back like water made of moonlight. She was beautiful. She was also terrifying. Around her stood her council, 12 advisors, each one ancient and powerful. And beside the throne stood General Kethvor, the commander of all Velthari military forces. He was old and scarred, with one eye replaced by a glowing red crystal. He looked at Daniel with pure hatred. Daniel stopped at the proper distance and bowed his head in respect. He did not kneel. Humans did not kneel to foreign powers. But he showed proper respect, because that was why he was here. "So," the Empress said, and her voice echoed through the great room like music and thunder combined. "This is what Earth sends us." She leaned forward on her throne, and a smile played on her lips. It was not a kind smile. "One tired soldier," she continued, "with scars on his hands and dirt beneath his nails. Not a diplomat, not a general, not even a captain or a commander. A common sergeant." Laughter rippled through the council. General Kethvor's lips twisted in amusement. Daniel said nothing. He simply stood there, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the Empress with quiet patience. "Tell me, human," Solara said, tilting her head like a curious predator. "Do your people truly believe that one man can negotiate with an empire that has crushed 1,000 worlds? Or have they simply sent you here to die with some small amount of dignity?" More laughter, louder this time. Daniel waited until the room was quiet again. Then he spoke, and his voice was calm and clear. "I am here to talk, Your Majesty. Nothing more. My government hopes that we can find a path to peace that benefits both our peoples. I carry no weapons and no threats. I carry only words, and the hope that we can end the fighting before more lives are lost." The Empress stared at him for a long moment. Her smile faded slightly, replaced by something that might have been curiosity. "Hope," she repeated, as if tasting a strange food. "Your species is famous for that, isn't it? You hope when there is no reason to hope. You fight when there is no chance of winning. You dream when you should be accepting reality." She stood from her throne and floated down to the floor. Her gown trailed behind her, made of something that looked like liquid silver. She walked toward Daniel slowly, her guards tensing with each step she took. She stopped just 3 feet away from him. Up close, she was even more beautiful, and even more dangerous. Power radiated from her like heat from a star. "I have studied your species," she said quietly. "You live such short lives. 80 years. Perhaps 100 if you are lucky. We live for 1,000. In the time it takes one of us to grow bored, your entire civilization could rise and fall." She reached out and touched his chin, lifting his face so she could look into his eyes. Her fingers were cool and smooth. "Why should I take you seriously?" she asked. "Why should I listen to the words of a mayfly?" Daniel met her gaze without fear. "Because mayflies still feel pain when they die, Your Majesty. And so do the children they leave behind." Something flickered in the Empress's eyes. Something she quickly hid. She stepped back and returned to her throne, floating up to sit upon it once more. Her face was cold again, like a mask made of ice. "We will discuss the terms tomorrow," she announced. "Tonight, you will be given quarters. My people will see to your needs." She paused, and her smile returned. "Try not to break anything. Human, everything in this palace is worth more than your entire planet." The council laughed again. Daniel bowed his head once more. "Thank you, Your Majesty." He was led away by guards, and the great doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder. On her throne, Empress Silara Vethkin watched him go. The smile was still on her face, but her eyes were thoughtful. There was something about this human, something she could not quite name. She would discover what it was soon enough. The next morning came quickly. Daniel had not slept well. His room was beautiful beyond anything on earth, with walls that showed peaceful scenes of alien forests and a bed that floated in the air like a cloud. But beauty could not quiet the memories that haunted him at night. He washed his face with cold water and put on his uniform. He looked at himself in the mirror. A tired man looked back. Gray was starting to show in his dark hair. Lines had formed around his eyes. He was only 34. But some days he felt much older. He thought about home. He thought about Cedar Falls, the small town where he grew up. He thought about the house he had built with his own hands, the garden that Amy had loved, the swing set where Lucy used to play. He closed his eyes and pushed the memories down deep. Today would be difficult. He knew that. But he had faced difficult days before. The guards came for him an hour later. They walked him through the crystal hallways once more, past staring nobles and whispering servants. This time, they did not take him to the throne room. They took him to a great hall, where the council waited. It was a circular room with seats rising up on all sides, like a theater. In the center was a single chair. Plain and simple. That was where they put Daniel. The Empress sat at the highest point, looking down at him. Her council surrounded her. General Kethvor stood at her right hand, his red eye glowing with cold light. "Today," the Empress announced, "we will discuss the terms of peace. But first, we must understand what we are dealing with. We must understand humanity." She gestured, and the room went dark. Holographic images appeared in the air, surrounding Daniel on all sides. "Let us begin with your history," she said. What followed was 2 hours of humiliation. The Velthari showed images of human wars. Thousands of years of humans killing each other over land, over resources, over ideas. They showed the pollution that had nearly destroyed Earth. They showed the famines, the plagues, the cruelty that humans had inflicted upon each other long before they ever reached the stars. "You are a violent species," one of the advisors declared. "You cannot even live in peace with yourselves. How can you ask for peace with us?" Daniel said nothing. They showed images of human technology, their ships, their weapons, their stations. They compared them to Velthari technology, and the difference was embarrassing. Human ships were slow, clumsy, barely able to cross the stars. Velthari ships were works of art, fast and deadly and beautiful. Your fastest ship would take a month to travel what ours can cross in a day, General Kethvor said with a sneer. Your weapons are toys. Your armor is paper. One Velthari battleship could destroy your entire fleet. Daniel said nothing. They showed footage from the border conflicts. Human soldiers fighting and dying against Velthari warriors. It was not a fair comparison. The Velthari were stronger, faster, harder to kill. They watched as human soldiers fell, one after another, cut down by energy weapons and crystal blades. Your soldiers are brave, the general admitted. I will give them that. They do not run, even when they know they will die. But bravery is not enough. A brave insect is still an insect. The council laughed. Daniel said nothing. Finally, they showed images of human colonies. Small settlements on harsh worlds, struggling to survive. The 12 colonies that made up human space were tiny compared to the 40 systems of the Velthari Empire. They were young, fragile, easily crushed. You are children, the Empress said softly. Children playing at being a civilization. You have existed as a star-faring species for less than 200 years. We have ruled the stars for 10,000. You are nothing to us. Less than nothing. She leaned forward, her violet eyes fixed on Daniel's face. And yet here you sit, asking for peace, asking us to treat you as equals. Tell me, human, why should we not simply destroy your colonies and end this farce? The room was silent. Every eye was on Daniel. He looked up at the Empress. His face was calm. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but clear. You could destroy us, he said. You are stronger, older, more powerful in every way. That is true. I will not pretend otherwise. He paused and looked around the room at all the faces staring down at him. But I wonder, he continued, if that is really what you want. You have conquered 1,000 worlds. You have crushed species that were older and stronger than we are. What did it cost you? How many of your own people died in those wars? How many families were broken? How many children never knew their parents? The council stirred uncomfortably. War is easy, Daniel said. Anyone can choose war. It takes no courage, no wisdom, no strength of character. You simply point at an enemy and say, destroy them. But peace? Peace is hard. Peace requires you to look at someone different from you and say, we can find another way. That takes real strength. Quote, General Kethvor slammed his fist on the arm of his chair. You dare lecture us about strength? You, a soldier of a defeated people? We are not defeated, Daniel replied calmly. We are still here. We are still fighting. And we will keep fighting for as long as we must. Not because we think we can win, but because that is who we are. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We endure. He looked directly at the Empress. You can kill us, Your Majesty. You can burn our worlds and scatter our ashes across the void. But you will never break us. And somewhere, in some distant future, another species will rise. They will find the ruins of our civilization, and they will learn our story. They will learn that humanity faced the greatest empire in the galaxy and refused to kneel, and they will be inspired. He smiled, just slightly. Is that the legacy you want? To be remembered as the empire that crushed a brave young species just because they could? Or would you rather be remembered as the empire that chose wisdom over destruction? That showed mercy when mercy was difficult? The room was completely silent. Empress Solara stared at him for a long time. Her face was unreadable. A mask of perfect control. but something moved behind her eyes. Something troubled and uncertain. "Take him back to his quarters," she said at last. Her voice was flat and cold. "We will continue tomorrow." The guards came forward and led Daniel away. He walked with his head high, his back straight, showing no fear and no anger. Behind him, the council erupted in noise. Advisors argued with each other. General Kethvor demanded that the human be executed for his insolence. Others called for caution, for patience, for more information, but the Empress was silent. She sat on her floating throne, her eyes fixed on the door through which Daniel had disappeared. She was thinking about something he had said, about children who never knew their parents. And for the first time in many years, Empress Silara Vethkin felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt doubt. That night, Empress Silara could not sleep. She lay in her great bed, surrounded by silk sheets that cost more than most planets. The ceiling above her showed a perfect image of the stars, slowly turning as the night passed. It was beautiful and peaceful, but her mind was full of noise. She kept thinking about the human, about his calm face and steady eyes, about the way he had spoken to her council without fear. He was nothing, a soldier from a weak species, and yet somehow he had shaken something deep inside her. She did not like this feeling. She did not understand it. Finally, she gave up on sleep. She rose from her bed and wrapped herself in a robe of silver silk. Then she called for advisor Morath. Morath was the oldest member of her council. He had served her father and her grandfather before that. His skin was darker than most Velthari, the color of old iron, and his eyes were almost black. He was the keeper of secrets, the master of information. Nothing happened in the galaxy that Morath did not know. He arrived within minutes, despite the late hour. He bowed low before his Empress. "You summoned me, Majesty?" "The human," Silara said. She stood at her window, looking out at the sleeping city below. "I want to know everything about him." "Everything." Morath was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "I anticipated you might ask." "Majesty, I have already prepared a file." He pulled a small crystal from his robe and held it up. Light spilled from it, forming a holographic display in the air. "His name is Daniel Cole," Morath began. "He was born 34 years ago, in a small settlement called Cedar Falls, in the central region of the North American continent on Earth. His parents were farmers. Simple people. He was the youngest of 3 children. Images appeared in the light. A small house surrounded by green fields. A young boy with dark hair and a quick smile. A family sitting together at a wooden table. He enlisted in the United Earth Defense Force at the age of 18, Morath continued. His scores were average. His instructors noted that he was quiet, determined, and unusually calm under pressure. He was assigned to an infantry unit and deployed to his first combat zone within a year. More images. A young soldier in armor, standing with his unit. Battle footage, chaotic and violent. Worlds covered in fire and smoke. He has served in 9 combat zones over the past 16 years. He has been wounded 7 times. He has received the Silver Star for bravery, the Bronze Heart for wounds received in battle, and the Medal of Distinguished Service. He has turned down 3 promotions, preferring to remain with his unit as a sergeant. Silara turned from the window. He does not wear his medals. He does not wear his medals. No, Majesty, he does not. Why? Morath hesitated. The light from the crystal shifted, showing new images. A young woman with dark hair and bright eyes. A little girl with her father's smile. 10 years ago, Morath said quietly, Sergeant Cole married a woman named Amy Foster. They had 1 child, a daughter named Lucy. By all accounts, it was a happy family. The sergeant was devoted to his wife and daughter. He spent every leave with them. He was saving money to buy a farm when his service ended. Silara watched the images move. The woman laughing, the little girl running through a garden, the soldier holding his daughter on his shoulders, both of them smiling at the camera. Something cold began to form in the Empress's stomach. 3 years ago, Morath continued, and his voice was very soft now. The Velthari Third Fleet conducted a punitive bombardment of the civilian station, Haven's Rest. It was classified as a military target because it housed a small refueling depot used by Earth patrol ships. But most of the station's population was civilian. Families. Children. The images changed again. A space station, small and fragile against the blackness. Then fire. Explosions. Metal tearing apart in the void. The station was destroyed, Morath said. There were no survivors. Amy Cole and Lucy Cole were aboard, visiting family. They died instantly. Solara closed her eyes. She remembered that bombardment. She had ordered it herself. Sergeant Cole was on patrol duty 3 systems away when he received the news. Morath continued. His commanding officer offered him leave to return to Earth. He refused. He said there was nothing left for him there. He continued his patrol and has not returned to Earth since. The Empress opened her eyes. He lost his family because of us. Because of me. Yes, Majesty. And yet he came here. To negotiate peace. Yes, Majesty. Solara walked to the holographic display. She looked at the image of the little girl. Lucy Cole. She had been 7 years old when she died. She had dark hair like her father and her mother's bright smile. Why? Solara whispered. Why would he volunteer for this mission? He should hate us. He should want revenge. Morath was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his robe and pulled out another crystal. This one showed a document, human writing translated into Velthari script. This is from his personal file, Morath said. A statement he made when he volunteered for the diplomatic mission. His commanding officers tried to talk him out of it. They said it was too dangerous. That the Velthari would never listen to a common soldier. He said this in response. Solara read the words. They burned into her mind like fire. My daughter Lucy loved the stars. She used to sit at the window of our station quarters and watch the ships go by. She would ask me about the aliens, about what they were like, and whether they were kind or cruel. I told her that there were good people everywhere, even among our enemies. I told her that someday humans and aliens would be friends. She believed me. She believed it with all her heart. She died believing it. I cannot save her. I cannot bring her back. But maybe, if I try hard enough, I can prove her right. Maybe I can make the universe she believed in become real. That is why I am going. Not for revenge. Not for glory. For Lucy. The room was silent. Solara felt something wet on her face. She touched her cheek and found tears. She had not cried since she was a child. She had taught herself to be strong, to be cold, to be the ruler her empire needed. But now, alone in the darkness, she wept. She wept for a little girl she had never met. A little girl who had loved the stars and believed in a universe where humans and aliens could be friends. A little girl who had died because of an order Solara had given without a second thought. Leave me, she whispered to Morath. The old advisor bowed and departed, taking the crystals with him. But the images remained in Solara's mind. The smiling family. The burning station. The quiet soldier who had lost everything and still chose peace. She stood at the window until dawn broke over the crystal city. And when the sun rose, Empress Solara Vethkin was a different person than she had been the night before. She did not yet know what she would do, but she knew that something had to change. Something had to change. The morning sun filled the throne room with golden light. It danced on the crystal walls and made patterns on the floor like scattered diamonds. It was beautiful. As everything in the Velthari palace was beautiful. But beauty meant nothing to Daniel Cole as he walked through the great doors. He expected another day of mockery. Another day of sitting in that simple chair while the council threw insults at him. He had prepared himself for it. He had built walls around his heart, strong and thick, to protect himself from the words that would come. But something was different today. The council was not there. The great circular room was empty except for the Empress on her floating throne and 4 guards standing at the corners of the room. The silence was heavy and strange. Daniel stopped at the proper distance and bowed his head. Your Majesty, The Empress did not speak immediately. She sat on her throne, dressed in white instead of silver, her white hair falling loose around her shoulders. She looked younger than she had before, softer somehow. Her violet eyes studied him with an expression he could not read. "Leave us," she said. The guards hesitated. They looked at each other with uncertain eyes. "I said leave us," Solara repeated. Her voice was quiet but carried the weight of absolute command. "Wait outside the doors. Do not enter unless I call for you." The guards bowed and withdrew. The great doors closed behind them with a sound that echoed through the empty room. Now there were only two people in the throne room: an empress and a sergeant, a conqueror and a grieving father. Solara descended from her throne. She did not float down slowly as she had before. She walked, her bare feet touching the cold crystal floor. Step by step, she approached the human until she stood before him. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the dark circles under his eyes, the way his shoulders carried an invisible weight. He looked like a man who had not slept well in a very long time, perhaps in years. "I know who you are now," she said softly. "I know what happened to your family." Daniel's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes, quickly hidden. "May I ask how, Your Majesty?" "I have people who find things. They found your file, your history." She paused. "Your daughter's name." The air between them seemed to grow heavier. Daniel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but there was an edge of pain beneath the words. "Her name was Lucy." "I know. And your wife was Amy." "Yes." Solara felt the weight of guilt pressing down on her chest. She had ordered the destruction of Haven's Rest. She had not thought about the civilians. She had not cared. They were just humans. Insects. Mayflies. What did their lives matter compared to the glory of the Empire? Now, standing before this quiet man, she understood what she had done. "I gave the order," she said. The words came out before she could stop them. "The bombardment of Haven's Rest. It was my command. I killed your family." Daniel looked at her. Really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. His eyes were brown, the color of earth and wood and simple things. There was no hatred in them, no anger, only a deep and terrible sadness. "I know," he said quietly. "You knew? And yet, you came here?" "Yes." "Why?" The question burst from her lips. "You should hate me. You should want to kill me. I destroyed everything you loved. How can you stand there so calmly? How can you speak to me of peace?" Daniel was quiet for a long time. The silence stretched between them like a bridge over an abyss. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because Lucy would not have wanted me to hate you." Solara felt tears threatening to fall. She fought them back, but they came anyway, sliding down her silver cheeks. "She was 7 years old," Daniel continued. "She had her mother's smile and my stubbornness. She loved to watch the stars. Every night, before bed, she would sit at the window and point at the lights and ask me what was out there. I told her stories about the aliens, about all the different people living among the stars. She used to say that she wanted to meet them. She wanted to be friends with everyone in the universe." His voice broke slightly, but he kept going. "When she heard about the war, she was sad. She asked me why we were fighting. I did not have a good answer. How do you explain hatred to a child who has never felt it? She made me promise something. She made me promise that I would try to make friends, not enemies. She made me promise to choose peace." He looked down at his hands. Strong hands, scarred by years of war. "I could not save her. I was 3 systems away when she died. I did not even get to say goodbye. But I can keep my promise. I can try to build the universe she believed in, a universe where humans and Velthari can be friends, where no other father has to lose his daughter to a war that did not need to happen." He raised his eyes to meet hers. "That is why I am here, Your Majesty. Not for revenge, not for politics, for Lucy." Solara could not speak. She could not breathe. She stood before this human, this man she had wronged in the worst possible way, and felt the foundations of her world cracking beneath her feet. She had been raised to be strong, to be cold, to rule without mercy or doubt. She had conquered worlds and crushed rebellions, and ordered deaths without blinking. She had believed that power was the only thing that mattered, but power had not prepared her for this. For a man who had every right to hate her, and chose not to. For a love that continued beyond death. For a promise made to a child who would never grow up. "The peace talks," she said finally. Her voice was rough with emotion. "They will continue. I give you my word. We will find a way to end this war." Daniel nodded slowly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. Call me Silara." He hesitated, then nodded again. "Thank you, Silara." She wanted to say more. She wanted to apologize, to beg forgiveness, to somehow undo the terrible thing she had done. But she knew that words could not bring back the dead. Words could not rebuild what was broken. All she could do was move forward. All she could do was choose differently. "Go home, Daniel Cole," she said softly. "Go back to Earth. Tell your people that the Empress of the Velthari wishes for peace. Tell them that we will send a formal delegation within the month. Tell them that the war is over." Daniel bowed his head one final time. "I will." He turned and walked toward the doors. His footsteps echoed in the empty room. The sunlight caught his uniform and made it glow. Silara watched him go. She watched this tired, grieving, unbreakable man walk away from her. And she felt something change inside her heart. When the doors closed behind him, she sank to her knees on the cold crystal floor. And for the second time in as many days, the Empress of the Velthari Empire wept. 6 months passed like water through cupped hands. The galaxy watched in disbelief as the Velthari Empire and the United Earth Coalition signed the Treaty of Velthara. It was the first peace agreement in 10,000 years of Velthari history that did not end with the complete surrender of the other side. Humans kept their 12 colonies. They kept their ships and their freedom. They were recognized as equals, a small but sovereign power among the stars. The news spread across human space like wildfire. People danced in the streets of Earth's great cities. Families wept with joy on distant colony worlds. The war was over. Their children would not die in battles against silver-skinned giants. The future was bright again. But the man who made it all possible was not there to celebrate. Daniel Cole went home. He took a transport ship from the Velthari capital to Earth. It was a long journey, almost 3 weeks through the darkness between stars. He spent most of that time alone in his small cabin, looking out at the void. He did not speak much to the other passengers. He did not watch the news reports about the treaty. He simply sat in silence and watched the stars go by. When he finally reached Earth, he did not go to the capital. He did not meet with generals or politicians. He took a small shuttle to the central continent and landed in a field just outside Cedar Falls. The town was the same as he remembered. Small houses with wooden walls and simple roofs. Fields of wheat and corn stretching to the horizon. The same old church with its white steeple. The same schoolhouse where he had learned to read and write as a boy. He walked through the streets slowly, taking in every detail. People recognized him, but they did not approach. There was something in his eyes that told them he needed to be alone. At the edge of town, he found the house he had built with his own hands. It was still there, waiting for him. The paint was faded. The garden was overgrown with weeds. The swing set in the backyard had rusted over the years. Daniel stood at the gate for a long time, just looking. Then he took a deep breath and went inside. The house was dusty and quiet. Sheets covered the furniture like ghosts. The windows were dark. But as Daniel walked through the rooms, he could almost hear the echoes of happier times. Amy's laughter in the kitchen, Lucy's footsteps running down the hallway, the sound of bedtime stories and family dinners and all the small moments that made a life. He found Lucy's room at the end of the hall. He had not been there since before he left for the diplomatic mission. He had not had the strength. The room was pink and white, just as she had liked it. Her toys still sat on shelves, waiting for a child who would never come back. Her drawings hung on the walls, pictures of stars and rockets and aliens with friendly smiles. And on her bed, worn and faded, was the stuffed rabbit she had slept with every night. Daniel picked up the rabbit and held it to his chest. He closed his eyes and let the tears come. He cried for a long time. He cried for Amy and Lucy. He cried for all the years he would never have. He cried for the father he might have been, and the husband he wished he could still be. And when he was done, he put the rabbit back on the bed and wiped his eyes. There was work to do. Over the next few weeks, Daniel fixed up the house. He repaired the roof and painted the walls. He cleared the weeds from the garden and planted new flowers. He oiled the swing set until it moved smoothly again. People from the town came to help. They brought food and tools and offered their hands. They did not ask questions. They simply worked beside him, and when the work was done, they left him in peace. By the time summer came, the house was beautiful again. The garden was full of color. The swing set shone in the sunlight. It was not the same as before. It could never be the same. But it was home. Daniel spent his days quietly. He worked in the garden. He read books on the porch. He took long walks through the fields, watching the sun rise and set over the land where he was born. He did not seek fame or recognition. He did not give interviews or write books about his experience. He simply lived, one day at a time, carrying his grief and his hope in equal measure. But far across the galaxy, his name became legend. The Velthari people learned the story of the human soldier who had stood before their Empress without fear or hatred. They learned about his lost family, his promise to his daughter, his choice to seek peace instead of revenge. Young Velthari began to study human culture, curious about a species that could produce such a man. On the anniversary of the treaty, Empress Solara gave a speech to her people. She spoke about strength and weakness, about power and wisdom. She told them about Daniel Cole, about the lesson he had taught her. "I once believed that strength was measured in warships and conquered worlds," she said. "I was wrong. True strength is measured in the heart. It is the courage to choose peace when war would be easier. It is the wisdom to see enemies as people. It is the love that survives even death." She paused, and her violet eyes were bright with emotion. "A human soldier taught me this. A man who lost everything and still chose hope. His name is Daniel Cole. He is the bravest person I have ever met. And as long as I rule this empire, his lesson will guide my hand." The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions heard it. And on a small planet called Earth, in a small town called Cedar Falls, an old soldier sat on his porch and watched the stars come out. He did not know about the speech. He did not know that he had become a legend. He simply sat in the quiet evening air, thinking about the people he had loved and the promise he had kept. In his garden, a single flower bloomed. It was a starflower, a hybrid created by Velthari scientists as a gift of thanks. It glowed softly in the darkness, blue and silver, like a tiny piece of the galaxy had fallen to Earth. Daniel looked at it and smiled. Somewhere, among the stars, he knew that Lucy was smiling too. She had believed that humans and aliens could be friends. She had believed in a universe of kindness and hope and love. And now, because of her father, that universe was real. Not perfect, not without pain, but real, and that was enough. That was more than enough.